how's it going, Doom? I was about to say Doom Patrollers, but really I should say Doom Force, thanks to Cliff. Welcome to my finale review and breakdown and recap for Doom Patrol Season 3, Episode 10. And what a way to end this season, and also set up Season 4. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to that, and I'm really happy where things left off this year. And not only that, I'm really grateful that we got an actual finale this year, because as many of you probably already know, but just for those who didn't, last year with the pandemic hitting, it halted production with only 2 days left of filming. So this year we actually got that set up for Season 4. It doesn't need to be wrapped up in Season 4 Episode 1. I'm really grateful that we know and have a good feel of where things are going. And just for those who may be new to this channel, I do recommend staying subscribed, because I will be covering Doom Patrol Season 4 updates, whether they're fairly small with new character castings. I'll do breakdowns for their character and where I think things could go. Obviously, all the way up until we get some very tangible stuff like trailer breakdowns and whatnot. But not only that, after doing my interview with Javan Wade, who obviously plays Cyborg on the show, the writer-producer Shoshana Sachi, I do plan on doing more Doom Patrol interviews just like this. So if you want to see more stuff like that, do make sure you're still subscribed. And hey, just give this video a thumbs up if you do go on to enjoy it. And if you've been here watching the reviews all season long, let's get this video a lot of likes. And I just want to thank you all, the little Doom Patrol community that we have, just for enjoying this show with me through these videos. I read all of your comments, and it's just fantastic. Just, I don't know, living it with you each week. So this episode picked up, of course, right at the end of last episode with the Doom bus just completely flipping over, and we see Rita just kind of laid out on the road. Everyone's pretty wrecked at this point. Just the morale is really low at this point, because clearly Rita is so driven to get her revenge after everything she's experienced with Madame Rouge, the loss of Malcolm, just the state of where things are at. However, everyone else is just more or less out for the count, and, you know, of which we actually even have Jane go down into the underground, of which we know we've got some spoony-ass things going on down there, which we didn't get truly picked up in this episode. I mean, there were several things going on in the underground, but what I'm referring to is those little red eyes. That's a very intriguing thing that wasn't addressed this episode. Obviously, they're gonna be saving the K-Chalice stuff and the little evil eyes that really scared her and made her scream in the first place into next season, especially with the things that are going on between Jane and Dr. Harrison. But initially, what Jane discovers is the aftermath of what Kay experienced and how she was more or less collapsing the underground. But yeah, I kind of like how this starts off, because we have Vic saying to Rita, and it's quite interesting because he was in quite the opposite direction once before as Cyborg, but here he's saying, you know, we're not a super team, which is also interesting because it contrasts the very end of this episode, where that is really what they're aiming for. I don't know if you guys watched the special features, so to speak, interviews with the actors and the showrunner Jeremy Carver after the episode airs, but it's as he said, next year, and well, really, as of the end of this episode, they're all going to make an effort to be something bigger than themselves. So at the beginning of this episode, they're not a super team, but by the end, they're very much so trying to be. And this is where Shelley Byron appears, the Fog, and this is why I really like this, because it's kind of, as I said, the Sisterhood were never really antagonists, even though there were little teasers for, oh, could they be threatening, or what could really be going on here? And not to mention, and I'll get on into this more in the scene later on, but it does seem like we will be seeing them again, and I just really like how helpful they've been, because in this moment, really, they've done nothing but probably some good for the world, if you look at it in the way that Shelley Byron said, that the eternal flagellation has had quite the effect across the globe, like, meaning that good results. But for Rita, it's like, but this is somewhat futile for me, because my only drive right now is to go after Rouge. But Shelley Byron is, you know, she's quite optimistic. She's saying, you know, I know Rouge isn't completely lost, and neither are you, because Rita right now, and this is true, she isn't really characteristic of the person we know. She's truly just being so absorbed through her desire for revenge after what happened to Malcolm. We then pick up with Monsieur Mille and Madame Rouge, who's still kind of like strapped down to the stretcher with Cliff's brain in a little freaking jar. This scene was very interesting, and I've got a few opinions on the Brotherhood. I love what they've done with Monsieur Mille and the Brain this season. Like, in this episode, last episode, the dynamic that they have is just hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. But there's a part of me that is feeling a bit bittersweet with the direction and the future of Doom Patrol, in how it seems to be somewhat segueing the Brotherhood out of the show before I feel like they ever truly began. And that's not necessarily definitive. I do want to stress that in a world like this, DC, even just anything to do with this, there's always, especially with what we've established with time travel and things now, there's always a way for these characters to pop up again in the future. But what I'm trying to say is now we've got to a point of where Monsieur Mille, through Madame Rouge, really, he's even thanking her for instilling in him the kind of final decision he's made to finally move on and put the evil behind him, because he mentioned how they had it good until Madame Rouge came along. They kind of lived for decades and decades and decades since their Brotherhood of Evil days, since Madame Rouge was sent off to go after Rita Farr. Nothing really so much happened other than them getting defeated from the original Doom Patrol. And they kind of, I guess, got to a life of complacency and not so much evil, Brotherhood of Evil operations. And Monsieur Mille actually did that. He had a good life with his little, I don't know, blender in the kitchen that we saw. But then Madame Rouge came along and, you know, the Brain got in his new body. Even though he was saying, like, oh, he's kind of put evil behind him as well, Monsieur Mille basically hinted that through the Brain now having Cliff's body, Ultimax's cycle of conquest will begin anew, and his desire for probably taking over the world will begin again now he's got an actual operational body. So yeah, Monsieur Mille just basically leaves the Brotherhood of Evil. He kind of retires and Ultimax is left by himself. So you see where I'm going with this. They're so great. They really are. The voice actors behind them, the representation on the show in terms of production and design and stuff. And not only that, not to mention in season 4 now, we're getting the Doom Patrol in a state of where they're going to hilariously probably attempt and fail at being this super Doom Force team and trying to be a super team to help, you know, just literally like in that situation with the ballsack monster at the end. They're going to try and help. What's more of a perfect opportunity than, I guess, springboarding a rejuvenated Ultimax the Brain, who's now found himself and has been instilled with his conviction of returning the Brotherhood of Evil again after years and years of just, I guess, not really doing much in season 4. But it's kind of like, yeah, you get what I'm saying. We've had them this season, spread few and far between. It's come up to present day. I completely understand how they got to the point of where they're at with not having as much of a desire for evil. But I feel like there's just aspect of, oh man, I would have liked to have seen more from them. But yet again, I do want to stress, it doesn't mean we have seen the last. But just at very face value perspective, it just does seem that we could have. But that would be a shame in my opinion, just because of how relevant the Brotherhood of Evil are to the Doom Patrol in the comics. And once again, considering where we're at the very end of this episode, the Doom Patrol are at a perfect point to take on whatever would be the Brotherhood of Evil's next big plan. I would love to know what you guys think of that. Either way, I don't have a huge issue. It's more of just the desire to see more. That's really where this is coming from with me, because they're just brilliant characters and I feel like there's such rich content ahead. And it would be a shame that if they're just gone forever now through, well, A, Monsieur Mille has retired, and B, well, what happened to the Brain? So you see what I mean? We'll get to that. Regardless though, Cliff's brain falls down into a little pit of Brotherhood of Evil discarded items, and one of the discarded little Brotherhood of Evil projects was the robot. And we can't forget that robot was literally designed by Mr. Nobody, Eric Morden, and they laughed at him and just, you know, parred him off for that idea and when he presented it to them. But it's just hilarious to me, and this is so Monsieur Mille and Ultimax, the Brain of what we see in this show, they still take his idea and build it anyway and still try and kill the original Doom Patrol with the robot. And this is obviously the remnants of the robot that is left after the little flashback battle we had all that time ago. Carrying on, being in the midst of Shelley Byron's fog, we know how kind of trippy that can be, being in that space. She said something along the lines of, you know, the Sisterhood kind of heard her distress, and at this point, it turns out all of the personalities of Kay are here in the fog, which is, I do have questions this episode. I feel like there were a few things that weren't so explained. Not that they always have to be, and I'm not trying to be nitpicky here, but my headcanon logic is, I suppose, with Shelley Byron and how she can absorb people literally. She also has that power and has, you know, had the Doom Patrol in the fog before. So I'm guessing she can somehow tap into Kay's personality, since, as I've mentioned before, and as you guys know, they are literal real people after what happened to Kay Chalice. They all springboarded into all of those personalities being actual individual beings in a way. So I'm guessing she can somehow kind of still create a safe haven from them, but the kind of leap in logic as to how, when Jane is outside the fog, yet all the personalities are in there, I'm just wondering how that works. And I just feel like there's a few things this episode like that. For example, I could be wrong about this, and I'll hold my hand up if I am wrong. When Madame Rouge goes to Shelley Byron's little safe haven from back in the Sisterhood days, I was under the impression that that place was somewhat of a meta construct that Shelley Byron created. It wasn't actually a room in the ant farm. I mean, am I wrong there? I swear they did sell it as it being some kind of little safe place that isn't actually necessarily a physical property in this realm and dimension, if you know what I'm trying to get at there. Yet Madame Rouge in present day goes to a place, that very place, which was a great scene. It's just, oh, is it a physical space then? Do you see what I'm going for there? It's just like there's a few disconnects which I don't really understand. After having this conversation with Hammerhead, she's saying like all the personalities feel safer in the fog, which I really can't blame them for at all, considering Kay is completely rejecting them. And, you know, as just furthermore to the point I was making a minute ago, these are literally individual people, so I completely understand how, despite them being created in the first place as this somewhat self-defense mechanism that fractured, you know, as it literally does to people in real life, as she created these personalities to help her, even though that is their original kind of baseline purpose. They are now people who have the risk of being rejected and forgotten about by Kay forever. So their desire to survive is probably their biggest priority at the minute. And it turns out when we get into the sweet shop in the fog, through the underground crumbling in the way it did, which I guess is symbolic and speaking larger to obviously what Kay is going through, thus her personalities that were forged are also at risk of crumbling, literally. As we saw Pretty Polly and the little mark on Dr. Harrison, they were never really going to survive long in the fog anyway, because as Kay, I suppose, crumbles and the underground crumbles, thus the personalities crumble. And the way I look at it, by the way, as to who is decided to crumble first, for example, Pretty Polly, and then Dr. Harrison, yet Jane doesn't have any of those marks, or as far as we know, Hammerhead doesn't. I think it is probably an order of priority, if that makes sense. I know that sounds a bit harsh, but I'm guessing that the people who will crumble first, the personalities that will crumble first, will be the ones who are least helpful to Kay, and probably meaning that Jane would be the last to show those symptoms, whereas the others will do it in like this prioritized order. And in that moment when it's kind of revealed in the conversation between Jane and Dr. Harrison, it's just like, man, Dr. Harrison really isn't a good person. As Jane says, you rather die and kill all of us than give that up, you know, the control. And it's like, damn, like, really? And now, especially where things could be going in season 4, I don't want Dr. Harrison to be the primary. But meanwhile, guys, one of my favorite parts of this episode, and there's a scene in this episode that is probably one of my favorite scenes out of the whole of Doom Patrol, and wait till we get to that because I can't wait to hear your thoughts on that particular scene. In this moment, we have the continuation of the negative baby reaching out, and one of the personalities reveals that the name of the baby is Keeg. I have absolutely no problem with this personality being able to speak to Keeg or know what he's saying, because at the end of the day, we have characters in Doom Patrol like the Question, who has the superpower of every power that you hadn't thought of. So it's understandable to me where you have multiple personalities that were given powers, that they could have a power to just understand anything just through the logic of superpower. So she says that if Larry does not merge with Keeg, he will die. Now, Larry is initially freaking out, understandably so, because he spent like 60 years of his life, as he says, with a previous alien creature who made that his home. And, you know, that's quite the thing to go through. Plus, he will be forced to kind of take responsibility for this new thing, this new living thing. And I think that's something that's intimidating to him, especially through how much pain and torture he's also caused the negative spirit before. Despite the negative spirit, and I miss the original negative spirit, I think we probably all do, having that bond with Larry and the audience, like we've been used to that character for a few years now, it wasn't smooth sailing. So there's a lot of apprehension for Larry going into this that is really understandable, because he probably doesn't want to give what he's given the previous negative spirit through how much turmoil he often goes through to a cute little negative Keeg. And this brings us to that moment where Keeg isn't successfully merging with Larry because Larry's wearing those radiation bandages, because otherwise if he took them off, everyone would get radiation poisoning. So Vic offers to carry Keeg with him, and so we literally get a moment where, well, not Cyborg, Vic is, well, taken over by Keeg, and his eyes just light up. Up next, though, we cut to the brain, living his best life still in the body of Cliff, if you want to call it a body. I don't know. I love the song choice, The Wanderer by Dion. It's perfect. I trust a lot of you have heard this song before. And this is when Madame Rouge arrives in the old Brotherhood of Evil robot. And this was brilliant. But once again, though, I hate to mention this. It's just, you know, consistency. How did Madame Rouge learn to, like, use this, where later on Jane, for example, asked, you know, how do I power this thing? So it's like Jane didn't know how to do that, yet Madame Rouge just knew how to. I only mention this just because I'm sure some people will say, but Madame Rouge was a part of the Brotherhood of Evil before, but she never learned how to operate this robot, for example. She was immediately dispatched on the mission to time travel. So, yeah, again, there's little things like this which make me go, eh? But either way, it's definitely overshadowed and overpowered through the peak comedy and brilliance of what this moment is, and that is a very Doom Patrol moment. Cliff and Madame Rouge just navigating in a big-ass robot all around Florida, but not before, obviously, catching up to the brain and trying to get that revenge, because Madame Rouge feels very wronged after, yeah, the brain just tried to kill her and Cliff. And so the robot, the big robot, steps on the brain. I'm pretty sure that probably should have just absolutely flattened him rather than cut him in half. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, though, is that considering what happened to Cliff's suit, if you will, there could be room for improvement there, but I don't think the suit needs any improvement. Plus, you know, when it comes to Robot Man's suit, even though the brain later on in that scene with Rita was just in half, that doesn't mean that it can't easily be put back together again, if you get what I'm saying. So don't get too excited about a Robot Man upgrade next year. It is totally possible. Maybe they could be doing it and say, oh, this will help with your Parkinson's or something, and there could be some room for, I don't know, a visual change. But as I said, the Robot Man design for Doom Patrol is definitive. It is spitting image of the comic book to life. So would you guys really, this is a question for you, want a visual change in Cliff Steele's design next season? Or do you think it's just going to be put back together, like the legs put back onto the body? But also, before we move on to a couple of other scenes, I do really like how Cliff was almost this mini inspiration to Rouge. I know at this point she'd already embarked on a bit of a desire to change through probably realizing this regret she had. And even in the first place, they definitely conveyed, even as of that moment, Madame Rouge did backstab the Sisterhood. She wasn't even fully sold on her own decision. So I like how Cliff here said there's always a chance to change, and he wants to work as hard as he can as possible to change. So if he can do it, she can do it too. And in this moment, he takes control of the robot, and she flies out the window in the bird form. And it's also just funny because now Cliff is quite literally Robot Man again, because Madame Rouge isn't in control, and he's just a brain in a big-ass gigantic robot. This brings us to that moment in where she goes to the little safe haven of the Sisterhood of Dada that I briefly spoke about earlier. But this was a really important scene, I feel, because it just brought up the bittersweet old memories for Rouge, thus also really emphasizing that guilt to the surface for her, because as I just very briefly mentioned, in that decision in the first place, she always looked conflicted. You could tell, and that's what was so great about Michelle Gomez's performance. She delivered such a it wasn't conviction or ruthless Rouge on her face. There was struggle to kind of have that conviction in the decision she made to betray the Sisterhood to the Ant Farm or the Bureau's soldiers in the first place. So just reflecting on all of that in this scene, it was a really nice kind of just flashback to everything we've experienced with these characters this season so far. It just forces her to reckon with who she is now and what she's going to choose to do, which is when she finds that door that was never there in the first place. This kind of furthers the evidence, I suppose, as to how it was just a metahuman construct, because if that door was never in there in the first place, this leads me to believe that Rita probably consulted Shelley to create another door to hide the time machine in, which kind of furthers the point of how I don't know how this place is accessible as a physical place. I don't know, though. I don't know. I don't really care at the end of the day. Meanwhile, though, we have Cliff finally having reached Clara's house. And this was just hilarious. There was a nice little Justice League Easter egg as well. One thing I really loved about this scene with Cliff is that it takes me back to the Subconscious Patrol episode in where we saw Cliff talking to the subconscious version of Cliff, which was Brendan Fraser, and how we actually saw him there. But we had that moment of where Cliff was listening, but there was this almost reluctance to own it immediately. This same with some of the other characters. And that's when, before he disappeared, he was just like, dude, he was almost, his own subconscious was judging him and was just like, dude, and he just disappeared. But in this moment, I just thought the Brendan version of Cliff, like the Flesh version, would be proud of him because he was really owning that subconscious Patrol realization that he already knows in his brain because it is his subconscious, and he was admitting it in how he was opening up about being a shitty dad even way before Parkinson's, pulling shit before she was even too young to remember or whatever. So yeah, it just made me think of that dude moment from Brendan Fraser before he disappeared, and how ultimately he would probably, his little subconscious in his brain will be smiling at himself. But either way, Rita is in Florida now. I don't know how close they were to the location, but either way, she's there, and we have Ultimax crawling on the floor. So I love this scene, but it's just kind of bringing up what I brought up earlier. I don't want to repeat myself, but in this scene, obviously we have the Monsieur Mille letter and how he's kind of left things behind. He cherishes their friendship together and the time they spent together. It was one for the ages. But ultimately, Rita boiled the kettle and just fried the brain's brain. Like, I guess you can assume he's dead, because I don't get how you survive a brain having boiling water poured all over it. I do want to stress, though, once again, doesn't mean they can't return back in the future, but it does leave me this bittersweet feeling of, oh my god, the Brotherhood was so amazing this season, and there's so much more rich content for them to come, possibly, but the brain's dead now. That's basically how I'm feeling, in all honesty, and it's like, oh, I want them again, and hopefully we'll have them again. But another great moment in this scene is kind of Rita coming into her own again, because she voices her motivations of her love for her friends, and she's done dancing around in the dark, and this was her kind of taking charge again of who she's destined to be, or at least starting to walk on the slabs of the pavement to that destination she will one day get to, which obviously springboards them into the ending of this episode and how they rally together to be the Doom Force. So yeah, a nice empowering moment for Rita here. Now with the Doom Patrol arriving back in Doom Manor, we get a nice little flirtatious scene between Jane and Shelley. I really do, I'm not like a cringy ship I ship them kind of person, but I ship Shelley and Jane. I don't know. There's something between them. They have chemistry on screen. I like seeing Jane have this. We've never really seen her have this little giddiness of romance. So it's also nice to know, because it's low-key set up for Shelley having some kind of role in Season 4 again, and that being a little subplot potentially for Jane in the future. The whole line of, were you really just helping others, or were you trying to draw me in? And then how Shelley's just like, which answer will get you to come in search of me again? And I thought that was like I am a bit of a sucker for romantic things like this. But also with Vic and Larry, we can't forget they're rushing their way back into Larry's room, in where Larry can, undo his bandages and it will be safe to do so. And Vic just, this scene was so good, because I was saying all season long, I wasn't sure about it, but I was like, surely this is a Cocoon-esque like state until it comes to fruition like a little butterfly. And I was hoping for a negative baby. I was really hoping for something like that, and they literally delivered. We had Vic release Keeg in a little baby form. Like, literally, it was a little baby. I love it. There's not really too much more to say about this scene other than it was so adorable yet so wonderful at the same time of how he's floating around. Larry removes his bandages and swears that he'll do the best he can to do right by Keeg, and so Keeg enters him. And can you imagine, like, this is what I mean with season 4 and how much excitement I have for it. On top of like the premise of them attempting to be a bit of a superhero team, the Doom Force, we also have some hilarious prospects with like a baby negative spirit. Like, what will that mean with the negative baby growing up with like a toddler phase or something like that? And I am so excited for this. All at the same time, we have Rouge arrive in a time machine and the season starts all over again. Only joking, I just mean in how she's forgot her memory all over again. This led to some funny scenes with the note that she left behind, kind of describing the Doom Patrol members. Of course, we then have Cliff arrive in his big robot form. He also managed to recover some of the Doom Patrol items like Jane's vinyls and stuff that he was selling on eBay. But there was still this somewhat threat with Cliff not being able to fully control the robots, so he could have quite literally have marched all over Cloverton. And this is one thing I really love, as a lot of us love, is the Jane and Cliff dynamic and how she teleported up there through Flit's help, I'm guessing, because how else would she get there? And she was just being there with Cliff, even with the risk of, well, she pulled the lever that initiated the self-destruct thing. Now, so there was so many great things I loved about this. It was so funny as well with just the fuck yous back and forth. Oh, that would have been an important detail to know. Very typical Jane and Cliff stuff, but also with her just hugging him, the little brain capsule, as they were waiting for it to explode. Now, the only, and I only say this in just feedback, the only issue I have with this is that through Jane saying and acknowledging, let's just explode in peace and quiet, for all intents and purposes, we're meant to believe that they could explode. The characters realize this in this moment. It's just that, well, if she teleported in there, Jane is quite literally putting the girl, Kay, at risk. And she's acknowledging that. She's acknowledging that she could blow up with Cliff. And I don't want to take away from this scene because it was so funny and it did something more for me in terms of, you know, the bonding moment they had, acknowledging that they could die together. But then, you know, it's really hard to believe for me to believe that Jane would be okay with having the ability to teleport out. And yes, I know she doesn't want to leave her friend, but isn't her main drive to protect the girl? Do you see what I'm getting at there? Like, she would die and all the personalities would die if the robot did explode. So that's the only kind of head scratch I have in that moment. It's a bit of a problematic scene in how I get what they were going for. I loved what they were doing, but then it's like, oh yeah, but isn't this uncharacteristic in the sense of Jane risking the K and the personalities? I would love your thoughts on that, but I don't really see any other way of looking at that. I've tried, but when you really look at it objectively, Jane was willing to die, and thus Kay die, and thus all the personalities. So this is one of my favorite scenes in all of Doom Patrol, when we had that moment, when Keeg had bonded with frickin' Larry. He comes out like imbued with such negative energy. He was so like illuminated with the blue, and it was so heroic, the music. It was like, okay, yeah, let's help. And then he flew, and then he just flopped. I know that's such simple comedy, but it is so perfect, and it just gives you that taster of what's to come with the little baby spirit. I want to ramble about this, but you already get the energy I'm giving off here, and I trust a lot of you feel the same. I could just compliment this scene again and again and again, and I want to see more. I can't wait to see more. And what's next for Larry? And it's so cool with how, even though it was a fail, he looked really cool with how like ready and willing he was about to be flying around. And then we finally get that moment with Rita and Madame Rouge, and it was just that moment of, I wouldn't say forgiveness, but sincerity from Madame Rouge. I think through that revelation that Rita witnessed of what Rouge did with, you know, this guilt coming to the surface, it's not that it fixes anything. It's just probably that she can tell that, as she said, she's not worth it, but there is this apology that is sincere. And after probably experiencing such slighting things in the past through Niles, I mean, she's been through somebody that she kind of low-key, you know, loved with such affection in a way through being with that man for years and years, and him looking after her, to learning that he was the person to cause her accident. I'm pretty sure Rita can get past somebody like Madame Rouge doing what she did. So yeah, that kind of solved that situation. This then kind of cooled down the episode with the report on TV about this group of super-powered eccentrics saving the day. I really loved Rita's speech as well, referencing their season 1 moment. I love the references just to what speaks larger to this season for the Sisterhood, with Rita saying it's time we choose to label ourselves. Who are we? What are we? Why are we? It was just like a really good settling moment to the episode that set up what was, you know, coming next. It's not a blank slate for Doom Patrol, because obviously, like, we've come this far, but yet again, I can totally see what more and how much more they have to go in seasons, hopefully plural, seasons ahead, because they finally come around to, like, yeah, okay, let's try and do something, and everyone gets in. Larry stands up, yeah, we're down for this. You know, obviously Cliff is mega down for it. Doom Force suits with pockets and shit and stuff. But, you know, it's also put the characters in a place where they've never been before. And what will that mean for them going forward? Now that they've began to really find their identity, where do things go on from here on out? And what does that mean that they will learn about themselves with all the endeavors they have operating as a Doom Force in the future? Not to mention, guys, Michelle Gomez sticking around. That is super, super interesting. And, you know, it's kind of like what I said to Javan Wade in my interview the other day. She fits in perfectly. Even outside the character, Michelle Gomez is this, you know, she's a larger-than-life type character, I feel, through what I've just seen through her. Outside of roles and just interviews and stuff, she looks like she belongs in this show, like, truly, like, even outside the character, as I've said. So I'm really happy that we are getting the addition of Madame Rouge into next season still. And they get their first mission, which is that giant-ass ballsack, whatever that is. It's still fantastic. The comedy was still peak with, like, how do we get there? Jane, would you possibly be able to get Flit? And then she just passes out. That leads into that scene, of course, which I almost forgot to mention, where she goes and she, I guess Dr. Harrison has to collect, the role of primary. But they didn't actually, like, show any exchange. It was kind of like a sitting down situation. So very intrigued to see where that goes from there on out. But then more or less they get inside Cliff. And they basically are using the time machine drill to travel there 3 minutes into the future, risking forgetting themselves at the same time, which could also be a funny thing starting off next season. But also just seeing the robot with Cliff going Doom Force and just going down into the ground is just something hilarious to see. And also imagine Cliff going through, like, the crust of the earth, and just popping up where the frickin' ballsack monster is. But that's basically the episode, guys. Very, 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 very happy with just the way things are left. What did you think of where things were left this season? I am absolutely ecstatic, as you can tell. And I would love to know your theories for where things can go from here on out with each character. There's a lot of predictions we can do now. I might even do a whole video of where I would like to see things go in Season 4. Let me know if you would like to see a video like that. There's quite a few Doom Patrol videos I can do off the back of Season 3. But guys, I'm going to love you and leave you now, so I would love for you guys to leave a like on this video. Do stay subscribed if you have subscribed recently with notifications on, or if you're brand new, subscribe to make sure that you don't miss out on any future interviews I do, any future updates for Doom Patrol Season 4. And as always, you can stay up to date with me with the links in a top pinned comment to my Twitter, Discord server, and all good things like that. But everyone, thank you so much for watching this season. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you, members of the Doom Force, in the next video. Goodbye.